Thank you, Mr. Umsi, for giving me the floor. So, greeting His Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the last motion for our first elimination rounds. So, to begin this debate, I would like to introduce the motions. The motion reads, this House believes that ASEAN can achieve a common educational quality standard and assurance. With these motions, on the side propositions, we have team from Indonesia, while on the side oppositions, we have Myanmar team ones. So we also have our three valuable judges. First, we have His Excellency Dr. Ron Chang, Deputy Secretary General of Accreditation Committee of Cambodia. Second, we have Her Excellency Ted Golab, Rector of Phnom Penh International University. And lastly, we have Dr. Kieng Rotana, President of Western University. Before we jump into our debate, I would like to present some flow of the debate. So each side have 5 minutes to present their constructive speech, starting from the first speaker of the proposition side and ending with the fourth speaker of the opposition side. The fourth speaker of each side has 3 minutes to do their reply speech. And the POI question should be within the 30-second time frame. So without further delay, I would like to invite our first speaker of the proposition side, Team Indonesia, to present their speech.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that everyone in this room agree that our main goals in order to achieve strong political, economic, and socio-cultural community. Meanwhile, in current status quo, we are still struggling in several weaknesses such as development gaps, disparities in economic growth, which slower the implementation of Asian agenda, for example, like Asian Economic Community stagnancy. The main problem here is the lack of human development, which can only be achieved through education and training. The reason why EU is that successful is not only because of the common market, but also about the common awareness and understanding about the quality education standard. For example, they have a strong Erasmus networking to support education, training, and youth. That's why affirmative team stance is clear that we want to enforce all members to achieve, and we are confident that we can achieve the common educational quality standard. 2 points in the first speaker. First, why this common standard is necessary and the current progress is already within the Asian interest. And second, about the feasibility. First, why it is necessary to have a common standard and the current progress is already within the Asian interest. We see that currently ASEAN is started by having the Asian Quality Assurance Network with its framework for higher education and TVET, Technical Vocational Education training. Why it is a good strategy? Higher education and TVET is the most possible education stage that can allow the citizen to achieve social mobility or the ability to improve their social states. The international workplace currently is demanding higher education outcomes and qualification of TVET in order to, because they have a practical skills and deeper understanding of the knowledge. Second, technical innovation to adapt with current advances of technological development only happen in university. Third, the impact of research that only happen in university having a quite significant impact. First, for example, the research regarding curriculum and teacher professional development, for example, can help each nation to develop their basic education or national educational quality. Second, public policy discussion will result into research-based policy that can help each nation to have economic and political stability support in the very first place. So those shows you that that current Asian strategy by starting having a quality standard in higher education is a good strategy. Opposition might argue that current disparity is still significant. We believe that this disparity is even happen because we do not have those common standard. Like current condition, we have different awareness and understanding of good practice of education in education. For example, Singapore is already aware of teacher professional development, supporting that teacher to pursue master or PhD, while other countries haven't had such awareness. That's why the common standard that we propose here is the solution for those status quo problems. In this common standard, we want to achieve internationalization and harmonization to achieve those common awareness and understanding. Our current progress is we have a regional accreditation to recognize the quality of higher education, unified framework that guide and assist each member states to achieve certain those qualified education, thousands of scholarships already given by the ASEAN to promote mobility among the member states. Also the collaboration of academic research, which in the end can achieve innovation-driven Asian community. So to sum up, we believe that it is necessary and current progress is already within the Asian interest. So the next question is why it is feasible to conduct. Opposition might argue that Asian member states consist of different characteristics and disparities of the member states. And affirmative term will shows you why this standard is not going to sacrifice each nation's identity and why gaps can be accommodated. First, education is a universal value, unlike political system that can be standardized. For example, like science, we have a universally recognized knowledge which can be delivered in different approaches. Pedagogical things like teaching theories, behavioralism, constructivism is a grounded theory that can be translated based on each country's condition and characteristics. That's why we are not going to sacrifice each nation's identity by having this common standard. Second, how our quality assurance standard work. First, it is aspirational and development oriented. We will have in the round table everyone has a say to contribute. So that's why it is inclusive. For example, previously Cambodia and Myanmar is still struggling with the quality assurance infrastructure, but because of the guidance and assistance from this framework, they show significant growth. Second, we are going to enforce by providing sets of principle of good practice. We are not trying to change the whole national system. Instead, we are going to demonstrate how to adjust the nation's condition to achieve the framework that we already have. And it will be conducted in gradual approach, so it will not burdening those countries in the end of the day. In addition, we are going to facilitating improvement by having a guidance and assistance for each member states in order to how to helping their education achieving this common standard. That's why we believe that it is within all member states' interest. We believe that the strong connection and the awareness that we need each other will most likely to make other countries to help to willing to help other countries' development. That's why under those reasons that first it is necessary for achieving Asian goals, and why is it feasible, we beg to propose. Thank you.
So next, I would like to open the quick PI session for the proposition side. So the opposition side, you can start raise the question.
I have a question. If ASEAN practice a common educational quality standard and assurance, we wonder how we can accumulate the standard of various disciplines.
Like I said before, the best, even though criteria of every country is different, but in education, we have a common grounding standard that we can achieve. Like, for example, what is the effective teacher professional development? In current research, we already have a framework how to achieve those effective teacher professional development, like courses and further education and such. So we are going to have this framework that facilitating those different characteristics and help them to achieve this common standard.
How can you verify, why can't you verify the quality assurance of different education?
Sorry?
How can you verify the quality assurance of different institutions?
We believe that those who are participating in the quality assurance framework is already have the expertise in terms of knowing the needs of international demand of what we need in education in current educational demand. Like, for example, what primary schools need or what higher education graduates need in this advances of technology, for example. That's why technological innovation or research also happen in university. From those understanding those demand, we accumulating those in the form of framework that we want to achieve as an Asian integration.
Yes, I have one more question, Ruth. Yeah. So you mentioned about the mobility. As regards the mobility, so do you have any schemes as regards if we So you mentioned about the different awareness in the region. You talk about the different awareness, like think about just PD. If we have the different focus areas, or I mean the priority areas, and how can you improve the student mobility via adapting the common educational quality standard? This is what we wonder. Thank you.
That's why the reasons why current mobility is not that efficient is because we don't have a common understanding or a common standard of what is good quality of education. By having this framework, which there is a regional body that accumulated the value that we want to achieve as ASEAN, so every member states will have those common understanding and mobility will more likely to happen. For example, if we have harmonization in higher education, we will have the possibility of credit transfer between university among Asian member states will more likely to happen. Without this common standard of educational quality assurance, there will such scenario will not happen under your proposal.
Now the QI session for the proposition side has ended. But before moving on to the next debaters, I would like to remind debaters of both team again that I will advise, but we can have limits. So you have 5 minutes for your speech and 3 minutes for your PIs. So when you hear the bell twice, you must stop speaking immediately. So next, I would like to invite the first speaker of the opposition side. You may have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before I come to my arguments, let's look at the Prime Minister has said why this reasoning to achieve a common education quality standards, but missing the some cases. Now we ask today, opposition strongly disagree that ASEAN can achieve a common education quality standards assurance. There are many things to be considered to achieve a quality education in the ASEAN region, and in reality, it is impossible to achieve it via the common quality standard education assurance. It is just a dream that is only theoretically and logically possible. It's not impossible in the reality. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to point out that there are many differences, standards, and assurance in the context of higher education. That is called diversity in the context. Having diversity in context may not be possible to achieve common educational standards and assurance. Accordingly, it is definitely a workable plan to adjust learning outcome as a common standards. There are institutional standards and the program standards. As you know, that they have many different aspects. How can we accumulate them in ASEAN? Is this for institution? Is this for program? Is it for both? So it's just imagination to achieve a common education standards and assurance in ASEAN. It is state differences standards in the ASEAN member states. In addition, common educational standard is not efficient way to achieve a quality education. For example, we are saying that the United States of the accreditation system is the oldest one in the world. The United States have a good foundation for the accreditation system. So if we look at the United education system, the United States accreditation structure is decentralized and independent. The education standards and assurance of the University of the United States are not the same. Even the students still live same country, they still speak same language, but situation in each region are different in many ways. We find the two types of accreditation in the United States, institutional and specific programmatics, and 4 types of accrediting organization in the United States. And also among them, as an example, there are 7 regional accrediting organization in their organization structure is not the same. You all know that even the United States with good reputation for the education do not centralize to have a common educational standard. It is those examples that we do not need to common education standard to achieve a quality education. Ladies and gentlemen, the next reason is that European countries have standards and guidelines for quality assurance in the European higher education area. It's called ESG. But most of the European countries regulate their own standards and assurance with their own education system. Moreover, United Kingdom applying to the quality code for the standards and the quality assurance in their education. They do not call the standard, they call the quality code. When we say the standards, it should be a few standards, a minimum standard, but not many standards. That is evident that the generic standard is not enough to get the quality education. In conclusion, there are two ways in considering the quality education. I wanted to mention about horizontal and the longitudinal. Currently in ASEAN country, there are different dimensions. These dimensions are not the same. These dimensions, I mean the horizontal means learning area are not the same, and also the longitudinal, the learning, the depth of learning cannot be the same. In some country or ASEAN, because of inadequate teaching materials, students in far-flung border areas study only theoretically and specialized subjects, but cannot do practical well, so they get used to the learning by heart. In this situation, it's not easy to get the common educational standard in the ASEAN. So how do students study in other ASEAN countries? In comparison with other ASEAN countries, you will find that many differences. With such differences, it is impossible to achieve a common educational standards in the ASEAN region and ensuring the quality. So that is why I strongly disagree motion submitted by the Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, leader oppositions of this side opposition. So next, I would like to session for the opposition side. You may start raising the questions.
Okay, so first clarification. We believe that a common educational standard and quality assurance is different with the idea of centralization and decentralization. While when we have a common standard and qualification here, we means that we are going to have a certain standard that we want to achieve here. So the logic is that we have a national curriculum that every region will have the chance to adjust it to their different characteristics. So the question is how, in your scenario, within those disparities that happen, those different capability that countries happen, you can achieve the goals of Asian pillars in the end of the day to achieve strong economic and socio-cultural community, for example.
So I already mentioned my motions about some cases of European countries like United States and also ASEAN countries. So the quality assurance is the process of assessing and monitoring, granting and monitoring, and improving the quality of higher education standards. That is why for example, in France, you know, the very differences standards. So I already mentioned about the institutional standard or the programmatic standard. So in France, the main tool for the quality assurance is the programmatics and the institutional education. They adopt for the both, but solely for the evaluation for the engineering program. That kind of France is the highest rank in the education in the Europe, but they can only programmatic standard like just only engineering. So in ASEAN, how can we accumulate then like standard programmatic standard? It can be maybe institutional standard can be the same. In this institutional standard cannot be the same because I already mentioned that the horizontal, the area of learning and the depth of learning. The depth of learning means the learning style is very different. So it is impossible to achieve common educational quality standards in the ASEAN country. That is, my motion is that. That is, yeah.
Yeah, I have a follow-up questions on that. One thing that you are sadly mistaken is that in the European they at least agree on the overlaying standard first, and then each country can have their own uniqueness embedded to it. But the problem with ASEAN that we have right now, like ACAF, for example, it's a framework that is non-binding. That's why under your scenario, we will never achieve a common quality. We will never be able to create a good standard of education if you're not enforcing those. That's why what we want to achieve in this status quo is what we want to achieve in this debate. How do you respond to that? There are differences between ASEAN and what happens in the European Union.
Yes, I did deny that the European has standards and guidelines for the quality assurance in the European higher education ESG. Yes, I agree. But most of the European countries didn't follow the.
Sorry. Okay. So now the POI session has ended. Let me move on to the side proposition. Second speaker, you may have the floor.
Thank you. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, First clarification is that we think that the opposition team are trying to sway and redefine the debate by saying that what equality education standard that we want is basically top to bottom. Basically, everything needs to be the same. But that's not what my first speaker has said. My first speaker has clearly explained to you that there are several levels of a standard that we can achieve without jeopardizing the uniqueness or even the necessity of every country. For example, history. If you are a Cambodian, if I'm Indonesian, there's not possibility that we can standardize the history lesson on each of the country, right? But what we can standardize is the quality of the teacher. What we can standardize is the minimum requirement for the teachers to begin with. So that's why we can ensure in several layers of possibility that there will be no bad thing that will happen. But second of all, if you're talking about something that is very rigid, for example, like math, for example, like physics, that's when we can actually do a standardization that may be a little bit more top to bottom, because we want to ensure that 1 plus 1 equals by 2. There's no universe that will have disagree with that. So this is one first clarification. So when the first speakers of the opposition said about diversity, and they champion diversity, and then they also believe diversity is the reason why it will not be achieved, we say they need to recheck again on what they mean by diversity, because we believe diversity is okay. Diversity is really good. But because we have a lot of diversity, at the very least, we can agree on several things that can rule and also regulate how those diversity being taught to our children, but how those diversity are being transferred as a knowledge transfer, because that's the important things in education, right? No matter how unique your culture, no matter how unique your lesson is, the important thing is that to have them to be regulated at least at some certain level. And that's exactly what happens in EU, right? Because we have two different, my first points, it will be about the comparison, like what directly responding to what the first speaker said. When we talk about other countries, they basically have the EUC, for example, they have those standards that have been agreed upon for all the European Union, but then they will have their own national level of standard that are adjusting to that. But the problem with ASEAN is that we have ACAN that was established in 2018 and was ratified in 2014. We have ACAF starting in 2011 and then until 2017, 2018, and until now. The problem with ACAF that we have in ASEAN is that it's not binding in such a way that it can regulate what happens and they can monitor what happens in each of the country. I'm not saying about intervention, but what we are saying is that we need to agree that we need to adopt that, not just simply by politically agreeing about what the standard is going to be, and don't have the timeline, don't have the deadline when we are going to achieve that. If we are going to have a good quality standard, then we need to have those sets of deadlines, those sets of responsibility that each country needs to have. Now, the question from the opposition might be, how is it possible, right? I have three reasons why it is possible, but first of all, why it is very urgent. Post-pandemic COVID-19 has created and accelerated a lot of technology and modern economy outside of the world. The problem with ASEAN is there is a gap between countries in ASEAN itself. We think that without standard quality of education that was common or the equal and the same, the problem is that there will be countries that were left behind when the other countries is trying to achieve those modern economy. And also, we think that it is possible. My second point, we believe that first of all, initial framework is already there. We have ACAN, we have ACAF. We just need to improve it a little bit so that all the countries can actually follow the standard, so that all the countries can actually create a deadline and timeline that they can achieve at the very first place. That are what we think the missing point of what we have in the status quo and what we want to achieve. Second of all, technology is accelerating. If you're talking about standard quality and how we want to achieve that, we can use technology to accelerate the proliferation, mainstreaming, and also how the technology can help us and other countries can catch up with the more prominent country in the ASEAN itself. And lastly, we have also the problem with diplomacy, that each country can actually is willing to do this. They actually wants to do this because they believe in their best interest is about regional. Because ASEAN is limited in geography, limited in national resource, in natural resources. If you're not cooperate and on the same level, then the ASEAN will never be able to achieve a more progressive welfare and even achieve the pillars of the ASEAN that was my first speak, but that was the biggest point and the objective of the government team. And because of those three reasons, we are very proud to propose.
Thank you, the Deputy of Prime Minister. Now I would like to open the PI session for the proposition side.
Okay, so I would like to ask the question. So what would be the consequences of having the difference between public and private setup for the educational quality assurance. As you know, our country has a lot of regulation and the different administrative style. Some countries have regulate by the only government, and also some of the, and for example, Singapore has both private and public have a good framework. That is why I would like to ask a question between public and private sector for the education and quality assurance. What would be the consequences of the having? Yeah,
I think the consequences will be good because we've seen cases and examples where, for example, like British curriculum that already been able to be put into several countries in across the country, not even ASEAN, across the countries. They're able to adapt to the national curriculum, and they're able to be adjusted to the national curriculum to begin with. And speaking about private and public, we think that the consequences itself will be positive, right? Because naturally, when we're going to introduce a level of standard, means that there will be incentive from the government, right? What kind of incentive? Can be subsidy, can be a higher quality rating for those universities that can attract more students to come in. We think that it will incentivize the public and the private university at the begin with, so that they want to achieve those standards. But one thing that are more important in this situation is that we think that there is a lot of cases that ASEAN policy does not start easy, but it doesn't mean that we should not start. For example, Asian Economic Community, Asian Open Sky, it needs a years of preparation, but we think that the mindset needs to be there, that the mindset needs to be in place first. Because if we only talking about framework, because if we're only talking about, guidelines, encouraging, and, something that you don't need to bind, you don't need to agree with, or you don't need to be responsible once you agree with, I think that's what is problematic. So that's my answer. No bad consequences. I think that's good. I'm not saying it's not going to be a problem, but I think that the problem will be manageable by incentive from the government.
Okay. The next question. Okay, as you mentioned already, in ASEAN, that there are many barriers in adopting the common education equality standard. As you know, of this inequality between rural and urban areas are undeniable challenges. Yes. Okay. How are you going to address this? It's very different.
Yes. Indonesia is the biggest country in ASEAN. We know so much about diversity and differences between urban areas. But we have national exam. We have the quality standard in our country to begin with. I'm sure Myanmar also has the same. I'm sure all the countries in ASEAN will also have the same. The problem is that although it's going to start centrally, it's going to start slowly coming to the urban areas to begin with, right? Because the problem with this is that once we see an example of good cases, when we see an example of positive cases, means that people will want to adopt that, and that's also an incentive for them to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let me move on to the third speaker. Oh, sorry, the second speaker of the opposition side. You have 5 minutes.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker and honorable judges. 3, 2, 1. Yes, Mr. Chair, Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister has mentioned the claims that ASEAN can achieve the common education quality standard and quality assurance. We need to be all on the same wavelength, so to speak. No, I'm afraid we don't agree with that, because it's not the workable idea in marching towards the quality education. First, the common education quality standard is the generic standard. How can it be used as the standard for a myriad of subjects? And how can it assure the quality of graduates from different disciplines? This is the questions that we have, because it's not applicable at the regional level and not even at the local level. Instead, what we need is the specific and professional standard vis-a-vis the learning content area. For instance, STEM, as our Prime Minister has, as our leader of opposition has mentioned from France, there's the accreditation is only used for engineering programs in France. This program has separate accreditation processes administered by the Engineering Accreditation Institution. So the data from the EduRank 2022 has proved the success of this program. So it proves the practicality of having a specific set of standards for engineering. So another example that I would like to take from the European country is Switzerland. Even in one country, the education system in 26 Canton differs as regards their mother tongue. So, though they are overseen by the State Secretariat for Education, Research, and Innovation, each canton creates and implements its own standards. If so, what about the quality of Swiss education? No wonder, in a recent study by OECD in 2018, it shows that it proves that in mathematics, Switzerland has been ranked number 11 out of 79. So, therefore, we can clearly see that having a specific set of standards which harmonize with a specific fee or specific place will lead to the betterment of the society. I'm afraid that goes against with what the Prime Minister has mentioned. Though there are diversities, so we would like to harmonize with the common one, but we would like to propose that we can go to the same, we can go to the betterment of our society, of our ASEAN, with a specific set of standards for the different disciplines. This is what we would like to claim. And secondly, what we would like to make is that the concept of one size fits all does not work in LNOB, leave no one behind. Yeah, as Deputy Prime Minister has just stated about the post-pandemic cases, the historic disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic causes inequalities among the countries. The data from UNESCO shows that 2 out of 3 countries delay or postpone the coalition on education for a year due to the pandemic. More importantly, 1.5 billion students and youth with the most vulnerable learners were hit hardest. This is a great loss in manpower as we are practicing LNOB approach in much implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. So the need to create a resilient community has been shed the light with the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, though the world is implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. As we have already known, the UN is going to hold the summits, the technical or political summits regarding education in the near future this year. So the world is implementing. So this the pandemic has created urgent challenges and has questioned the effectiveness of the measures. So to address these scenarios and to take account of the lessons learned from the Global Action Program on ESD, GAP from 2015 to 2019, and to prepare for the future unprecedented times, ESD for 2030 was adopted in 2019 as a roadmap to promote the contributions of learning contents to the sustainability of the community. So consequently, the role of higher education institution in establishing ESD has shifted from an exclusive focus on access and quality measures primarily in the form of outcome-based educations to an increased emphasis on learning content and its contribution to the sustainability of people and the planet. So this is and another example is micro-credential courses. We can have same vision, but with different missions. We go experience quality education with a specific and professional standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Now let me open the POI session for the opposition side.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. I don't see the logic why, because there is a standard, then inequality will start to rise. Because here's the thing, even though that there is a standard that you need to achieve, it doesn't have to be one night and then you need to achieve those standards to begin with. But even better, those standards exist to help you to navigate. Oh, I'm in this level. Now I need to go to that level. I need to do this, and this. I will have a cooperation with other countries to do this. I have resources to begin with. I can allocate my resources and then reduce the learning curve compared to there is no standard that I can follow. So I want to hear the logic coming from you. Why do you think when there is a standard, then the inequality will even get bigger? Thank you.
Yes, let me make sure your question first. So you mean even though there are inequalities, we can have the
I say why? Because there is standard, then inequality will get even bigger. Because in my logic, if there is standard, then people that are not yet in that level can navigate through that level. They will know how to. They will have the help. I just want to know why, according to you, when there is standard, inequality will be even worse. Thank you.
Okay, I'm afraid because we are mentioning that. Let me take the point from my last point. So you talk about the inequality. So even though having having the common standards will narrow down the gap between the inequalities. But what I'm afraid is if we focus on having the common standard, I'm afraid we will miss the other parts because the rise of micro-credential courses are inevitable evidence of this current world because we can narrow down the gap by giving the short courses the skill set. I mean, so we don't focus on the common standard. We focus on the specific skill sets that match with the today world, as well as more importantly, that match with the future world. So that's why the UN is also holding the political summit this coming September. So we need to rethink our education. We need to rethink education system and we reshape our education. So without having the common standards, how can we reduce the inequality? We are not focusing on the inequality, we are focusing on the equity. How can we make the peoples in ASEAN to have the equitable education or all-inclusive education? So if we focus on one way, so we will miss the other first. So what about the diversity and how can we make a beautiful world with the only one color, right? So we would like to narrow down the gap by providing the skill sets that match with the, as you have mentioned, the post-COVID pandemic causes or calls for the necessities and the skill set that are necessary for the today's world. So that's why we would like to claim that the specific skill sets, especially, for example, with the micro-credential courses, will be the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the PI session has ended. Let's hear what the government has in response to this.
Hi, can I confirm that I'm audible and visible? Yes. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Honorable judges, member of the House, and our honorable opponents. As my role as a third speaker, I'm going to dissect our case on today's debate based on 3 major points. Number 1, what does the standard that we are talking about in this debate? And secondly, whether or not the proposal is feasible. And thirdly, how the scenario are going to improve the quality of education in ASEAN, right? Now, let's go to the first topic definition of standard, because the opposition sides of the House seems to think that our standard would mean engineering, medicine, and science standard will be the same. That's not what we're trying to champion here, Madam Speaker and honorable judges. What we're trying to champion here is that no matter where you're coming from, whether you're from Cambodia or whether you come from Myanmar, that in order to be the engineering graduate or medicine graduate, the same level of standard will be equal, the same across the country in Asians. Meaning, we will ensure the quality within Asian region to have the same level of engineering graduate, medicine graduate, or any science graduates. So we don't have inequality between engineering graduate in Indonesia or engineering graduate in Cambodia, for example, because we have the same standard. We see this particular instances has already happened where we, like the prime ministers have appointed, that how we have different accreditation system between engineering school or even business school. For example, in European Union, we have the EQUIS accreditation system that ensuring that a business school for all over across the Europe have the same level of standard. And in order for you to graduate as a business student, you at the school itself have to meet the standard. The educator have to meet the same standard as well as the student have to meet the standards. So what we say is that this same level of standard is going to improve the quality of education. And lastly, it also has already happened in the status quo, right? Now, why is this very important? Because the same level of standard will ensure that we as a region will move toward the same direction at the same level, and not everyone, not, for example, right now, for Singapore, perhaps much more advanced compared to other countries. That we try to achieve, that that every country has the same level of education and has the same level of standard as Singapore does. And because we need to move as a region, right? We don't want to have a certain country has more advancement compared to the others. This is something that we don't see in the status quo, in which there is no significant standard. Every country has their own standard that they can really abide to. Having the standard will ensure that, okay, in order for me to achieve the same level of standard, I need to do this and this and this. For example, several task lists that each of the country need to do. And the same level of standard also ensure that everyone in the region will, help each other. That, for example, if Singapore is best in this particular field, then they will lend their, knowledge to Myanmar, who is not really excelling in that standard, and vice versa. For example, if Myanmar is excelling in certain field, then they can also, helping hand to other countries who are still struggling. First question has been dealt with. Second question on the feasibility. How are we going to achieve this, right? Because we see that having the standard and common goals is very important for us as a region. That's why we ensure the commonalities and the ensuring helping hands and collaboration between countries. And in comparison where we happen in the status quo, where there's no standard, where everyone is moving to our own direction, there is very minimum collaboration that is happening. There is minimum of transfer of knowledge or transfers of, standard that is happening. That is something that we want to achieve, and that is something that will become much more visible, because having the common goals will ensure everyone will have to work toward the same goal, and eventually would have a better collaboration to begin with. And lastly, on the last point of qualities, why we think that having the standard itself is going to improve the qualities. Again, we're going to speak on the behalf of a region of ASEAN itself, right? Because we have once we have the same quality within the region itself, then we're going to increase our competitiveness as a region compared to North Asia, compared to Australia or New Zealand, in which we already know there are much more quality education in terms of, for example, school ranking. They have more university in the top 100 ranking compared to us as a region. This is something that we want to change in order for us to improve the quality as well of the human resources. For all these reasons, we believe that the proposition has given proof example how standard is going to improve the quality of life, and is very feasible, very proud to propose.
Thank you. Now let me open the PI session for the proposition side.
Yes, let me ask one question. So you talk about the quality status, common quality standard, feasibility, and competitiveness of the regions in the world stage. So our question here is that you talk about having the common quality standard reduce the workload of the responsible committee to do this and that. Our question here is that according to a recent finding, most of the universities are under the responsibilities of the respective ministries in ASEAN. I mean, under different ministry, they are regulating under different ministries. So how would you solve the complex structure of responsibility as regards this case? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Bureaucracy will exist in every status quo, right? Every country has their own bureaucracy, has their own ministry system. But at least having the same standard, we're going to ensure that the Ministry of Education of any countries, that in order for you to have in order for the certain school to have the best, to become a best engineering school or the best medicine school, that have a certain standard that needs to be met. Like, for example, that their educators, to at least 50% of their educator, for example, needs to have a PhD. There is something that has nothing to do with the bureaucracy system. That is like a standard of having the education itself. Just like, for example, in order for you to, as a student, to pass and to graduate, you have certain have a grade that you need to achieve, right? That's something irrespective of the bureaucracy of the system. That is what the standard wanted to do, to have the same level of standard that is irrespective of the bureaucracy itself. And that is already happening. Like, for example, in every university, that regardless of where the country is, that you have to be go through 4 years of education, irrespective of how the education system in each country works. That shows that the standard is already there and is is irrespective of the bureaucracy itself.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned about the standard, and yes, one more question for you is, what do you think of the quality of the graduates? So you talk about the 4-year program in any country in ASEAN. Okay. And so what about how can you assure the quality of the graduates?
Okay, that's where the equal standards going to improve, right? Because right now we don't really know what, for example, in Myanmar, for perhaps to be an engineering student, to be a engineering graduate, you only need to pass B as an average. Whereas in Singapore, you need to have an A, for example. That's what we're trying to improve. That's the Asian, to be an engineering graduate, that you have to pass with a average of A. Now, how we're going to improve the engineering graduate is that we're going to transfer the knowledge. For example, like we're going to have like exchange of doctors, of exchange of educator between countries to increase the mobilities. Or, for example, that the Myanmar student could go to Singapore to be a better engineering graduate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now let me move on to the third speaker of the opposition side, please.
I will start. 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. I'm the third speaker of the opposition team. I would like to talk about that. Who can guarantee that common education can bring quality education in diverse ASEAN region? For my part, I have to point out some arguments to achieve quality education in ASEAN. Within ASEAN, the common reference framework HUEF is used to enable comparison of qualification across AMN. This enables quality assurance agency and higher education institutions in each country to improve themselves and to align with others across the region. HURF is just a model, and the principle including HURF are guidelines to develop their system. Firstly, quality standards and their use in quality assurance process are vary in each ASEAN country. For example, Indonesia and Malaysia have quality standards for both institutional and the program level. And Cambodia and Laos at only one level, and in Myanmar is just driving standard, not the qualifying stage. And some countries like Thailand and Indonesia have separate standards for external quality assurance and internal quality assurance that are managed by the different department or the different organization. Secondly, I would like to point out some different points in each ASEAN member state. In Brunei, 12 criteria are used for accreditation and monitor every year for study program and for institutions. In Cambodia, 9 criteria and 75 indicators are used and monitored every 5 years for institutions. In Laos, 10 standards and 50 indicators are used and monitored every 1 to 5 years, depending on the level of evaluation result. In Malaysia, 32 standards are used, and the program accredited under the Malaysia Qualification Accreditation 2007 will not expire date. Will not have expire date. Nonetheless, in Malaysia, the program is subjected to a maintenance audit, which is normally conducted at least once every 5 years. In Myanmar, quality assurance framework is used. It's responsible for maintenance and implementation of 2 quality standards. The quality standard has 30 dimensions. 1 to 10 for quality standard focus on system process within the provider, and dimension 11 to 30 on the institutional capacity to provide quality program leading to a qualification. Moreover, in Brunei, public universities are self-accrediting, which means that they can decide autonomously in which program they want to run, and they are not subject to external quality assurance. The approval for program is awarded by the University Academic Senate itself. So we can see quality assurance are very different. Quality assurance comes very different from in ASEAN region. The respective agencies are operated privately or under the supervision of the state authority. One more example. In Singapore has separate quality assurance framework for public and for private higher education, etc. Each one with different requirement and criteria. The operational level of quality assurance procedure of are also diverse. In some cases, only private universities are required to participate in quality assurance. Sometimes in state universities are under no particular standard quality control. The focus on assessment is either on individual study program or in entire quality management system. The last one, the organization of quality power is also diverse in ASEAN region. The science system is under one Ministry of Education or one Ministry of Science, and in other cases, the university are organized by different ministries according to their disciplinary constitution. It's a medical school are under the management of the health ministry. One more argument is the high technological code. If we build a formal educational quality, thank you. Therefore, it's too far from reality to achieve common educational standard in such very diverse ASEAN region. Is so far and so common quality assurance in ASEAN region is just an imaginary. Thank you.
Thank you, the third speaker of the opposition side. Now let me open the PI sessions.
Okay, so the second speakers say that every countries have their own indicators of evaluation for their quality assurance. It means that every country aware that as a nation, they need a national standard to guide the every regions with those different characteristic of every region to achieve. Then why the question is, it is not possible for us as an Asian to find the overlap criteria from those indicators that every country already have into a common standard that we as a framework that we can achieve. Furthermore, we not simply forcing them to achieve the standard, but there is a guidance and assistance from us, from Asian Quality Assurance Networking, for example, that already exists to support those universities. Then why this is still bad under your case? Second question is, then if you think that it is impossible to achieve that standard, so what is your solution to solve the disparity of education that happened in current Asian scenario?
Okay. Your first question is quality assurance. Sorry. Your first
you
question,
believe
please.
that every country have indicators of evaluation for their quality assurance, right?
Yes. Every country has quality assurance framework, but their standard and criteria are not the same for each country. They are very different from. I already mentioned about that. In Brunei, has the criteria is not the same. ASEAN qualification reference framework is just the generic, not for the specific institution or for the specific program. So it's not for every institution or every program. I don't. Your second question is what, please?
If you only say that it is impossible to have this common standard or qualification assurance to help those different countries to achieve this equal quality, then what is your solution to solve the disparity that have happened currently, the gap of education development between the member states?
Yes, in my mouth, if we go to the specific quality, I think that if our ASEAN go to the specific with the specific program quality assurance for the specific program, if we go to this quality assurance, if we go specific education for the specific program, we can get the quality assurance, and it's not the problem for student mobility or the other teacher mobility.
If you agree for the qualification assurance standard from specific programs, then you support our argument that it is possible to have a common quality assurance for any programs or any education level that we want to achieve those disparity.
No, every direction and same vision.
Now the PI session has ended. Let me move on to the last speaker of the proposition side, the reply speaker.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. we need to understand the reason why the ASEAN is actually exists is actually to help the weak and so forth. It's the definition. The main goal is actually to decrease the gap between each nation of member of states, and of course to grow together so we can get betterment into the world, right? So in in these things, we say that the reason why the gap is exists is because we are go as ourselves. We go not as a unity, but we go as one single person or one single body itself. For examples, before the existence of like the standardizations, the Germany and compared to the other nation is so much more advanced compared to the other. But right now, with the existence of standard itself, that overwhelming all of the nation, right now the development of the education is become better and better, and the gap is actually become lower and lower. This is the concept that we're trying to apply in ASEAN to begin with, right? So in these motions, we mainly talking about whether or not we can achieve the education standard or not. So we're talking about the possibility here, right? Both of the sides agree that education is literally important, but the things that we cannot agree is the opposition team say that it is important to like prioritize ourselves first, like using our standard to reach our goal as each nation, and ourselves is actually trying to help each nation to decrease the gap between the strongest and the weakest. For example, like the strongest right now is actually the Singapore, right? With the existence of this standard, we believe that we can achieve this kind of standard education, because standard education is literally important, right? Because no matter what kind of benefit, what kind of goals that you wanted to achieve, you always need a good human resources to run the system to go after your goals, right? So we cannot just give up in the situations that we are weakest compared to the other nations, and then we just go we say that it is better to use our system itself. Like opposition teams say that some of nation is actually good, some of nation like winning a champion of mathematics and so on and so forth by using its own standard, but it's actually only only a single examples that exist, right? We don't know what happened with the rest of university, with the rest of the citizens, right? This is the things that we're going to decrease, so everyone going to be advanced more and more. So the challenges itself, like the opposition said, is uneven spread of the citizen, like the diverse standard and so on and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand the existence of the diverse standard to begin with. But ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to apply this standard just recklessly. We are going to give this kind of standard through a lot of researches. For example, we already have it actually in ASEAN, right? So in order to reach those goals, we proud to propose. Thank you.
Now your time is up. So let me invite the last speaker of this debate, the last speaker of the opposition side. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Honorable judges, Prime Minister has stated that common educational standard is the solution for EMS. Deputy Prime Minister has expressed about the technologies and post-pandemic causes. Members of government has mentioned to attain knowledge among EMS. Though the government has proposed that ASEAN can achieve a common educational quality standards and assurance, is it achievable in practical means? As our LO said, U.S. accreditation structure is decentralized and independent. The educational standards and assurance of the U.S. university are not the same. It's not directly affected if it is institutional standard. It's clear that the institutional standards serve only to facilitate educational quality, while the program standards serve as an instrument for the quality of graduate. So it's proof that we cannot achieve the common educational quality standards and assurance. Our dialogue has clarified that adopting the common educational quality standards and assurance is very generic. The specific and professional standards are the hidden cap of sustaining the quality of graduate. It claims that one size fits all doesn't work in LNOP, leave no one behind. Adopting common educational standard is not accessible to achieve the quality standards and lifelong learning for sustainable development goal. As our members of opposition claim, even in ASEAN region, we can see that standards and criteria for accreditation systems are different. The accreditation system for public and private sector is not the same in each ASEAN country. What our members have already argued is that countries which haven't adopted the common educational standard is clearly saying that people in this country are experiencing the quality education. We cannot accumulate a myriad of standards, even if our ASEAN goes for the same vision. We can use different mixture. So, Honorable Judge, to put in a nutshell, the fact mentioned above prove that ASEAN cannot achieve a common educational quality standards and assurance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the reply speaker. Now our debate has come to the end, but before we go into the adjudication sessions, I would like to have a 5 technical minutes break for the judges to prepare their oral adjudication. Thank you.
Tung chiết rục pra sa on đợi nơi lơ vế so bên chân oi không ai đang thở chiến không ai miền chua là ba là bay một đông nay mà ha nô co bộ thay thay chiến chạy chẳng rắc nông pro vót mấy bên tình cặp quan mà nung chiên nhưng có bon khma trời tai bon to ra xa mor đông kê pi don ta ông có cùng bay rõ yên nhưng có bon khma trời tai không rắm không mây miên không buổi chiều là bay là ban tham tiết sắc máy đầy 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 cho góc cho la dương rùm kia sma rùm chân ta mùi chiếc trời ta rút buông dương hai cùng cần ta yêu chân pro srei rau mặt này nhiều bài chén chiến khăm rong rừng ba đôi xa cùng lăng chắn tiền xa mà kỳ thổ lũng muối chết nén từ chiến bàn sốc xén xa yêu chân so tru prang prai srok mia krup pra một nắng phiệp chiết nắng ban cho chuông lửa đang sáng còn nhưng có bon khma trời tai bon to ra xa mor bong kê pi don ta ông có cùng bay rõ miên nhưng có bon khma trời tai không prang không mây miên ông buổi chiều là bay là ban tham tiết sắc máy đầy 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 cho góc cho la dương rùm kia sma rùm chân ta mùi chiếc trời ta rùm buông dương hai cùng phần ta yêu chân pro srei rau mặt này vô bài chân ném គ្នារុញច្រាននាវាកម្ពុជាដល់ត្រើយសុភមង្គលយើងក៏បានខ្មែរត្រូវតែខំប្រឹងក្មេងគ្មានកម្ពុជាល្បីល្បាញថែមទៀតសម័យដៃចូលក្រោកឈរឡើងយើងរួមគ្នាស្មារតីស្មាររួមចិត្តតែមួយជាតិត្រូវការរួមពួងយើងមកគុំកន្តើយយុវជនប្រុសស្រីក្រោមអត្ថន័យនយោបាយឈ្នះដូនតាអង្គកំបីរមានយើងក៏បនត្រូវតែខំប្រឹងក្មេងកម្ពុជាល្បីល្បាញថែមទៀតសម័យដៃចូលក្រោកឈរយើងរួមគ្នាស្មារតីស្មារតីចិត្តតែមួយជាតិត្រូវការរួមពួងយើងហើយគុំកន្តើយយុវជនប្រុសស្រីក្រោមអត្ថន័យនយោបាយឈ្នះក្រោកឈរឡើងយើងរួមគ្នាស្មារតីស្មាររួមចិត្តតែមួយជាតិត្រូវការរួមពួងយើងហើយគុំកន្តើយយុវជនប្រុសស្រី
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the education session. But after this education session, we will have we will announce the results. But now let's hear from our judge first. First, I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Rod Chang, Deputy Secretary General of Accreditation Committee of Cambodia. Please.
Thank you. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. First, before giving comments, I would like to express my appreciation to the two team, proposition and opposition party, who make a great effort, in studying, in researching on very important topics, which is quality standard and quality assurance, which is very important for higher education for education system in the world and in ASEAN. The two teams, have raised a lot of good issue and giving the fact, meaning that you have done a lot of research, and through my listening and observation, and I see that you give, clear example, clear information in relation to quality assurance around the world. So you have learned a lot. Okay, you can be my assessor. Okay, AEC assessor team to conduct assessment in Cambodia. I'm sorry. Talking about achieving a common educational standard and quality assurance. Of course, I think it is good, but we face a lot of challenges, and I think it would be good if we could achieve this through example experience, because higher education become more and more globalized, and a lot of quality assurance agency have been established in order to ensure the quality, to narrow the gap, to bridge the gap between the quality among countries. For example, international quality assurance agency like INQUAHE, APQ, and Asian Pacific Quality Network. They also try to establish network in order to make sure the quality assurance is harmonized and mutual understanding, because we need to ensure to promote the staff mobility and student mobility as well. Before accepting and receiving a student, receiving university and sending university have to understand the level of quality assurance of the institution. Okay, so far we can harmonize quality assurance, quality standard. We ASEAN we develop we call ASEAN qualification framework, so that it is not compulsory, but each nation, ASEAN nation, can use Asian qualification framework as a reference point when they compare the qualification of the graduates of individual country. And another one is we call Asian quality assurance framework, and which is established by we call ACAN, Asian Qualification Quality Assurance Network. Is the network composed of the 10 countries, which try to harmonize and to get mutual understanding in terms of quality assurance. So so that university and higher education system in each country can use a reference point. It's not compulsory. It is a kind of mutual recognition and understanding. Okay, and not compulsory. It is a voluntary base. If whether they can use as a reference point for their qualification of their graduates. And I also agree because higher education is the key driver to Asian economic integration, so that there should be the quality disparity, in terms of quality among Asian countries as well. And that's why the two policy play very important role, ASEAN qualification framework and ASEAN quality assurance framework. And I also agree with the proposition side that there should be a common standard for professional field of study, for example, like medicine, engineering, IT, something like that, because this promote recognition and employability, mobility in ASEAN. Okay, if we want to introduce employment mobility, so there should be a common, at least common professional field of study standard, so that each country don't have to ask about the quality about the qualification of individual. If they graduate from Cambodia, they can go to work in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Myanmar, for example. So this very important. And I agree with the there's no one size fit all. Okay, even some country they have different standard for private and public university in some country. And in Cambodia, we use only one standard, and now it has been shifted from compulsory to voluntary base. And we also introduce program accreditation as well, because program accreditation can, can show the learning outcome of the student, so that it can respond to the needs of the job market, and it can be the point, specific data that can be used as a comparison, the quality performance of each program of higher education institution, right? There is the but actually the accreditation purpose is not to do the ranking, but the purpose of the government, is willing to look at the outstanding, in terms of program. We believe that institutional accreditation cannot be, used as a ranking, but program, I think we can do that on the voluntary base. Is not compulsory. If they would like to participate in the assessment, I think it would be good, because the government want to see which program is outstanding, is good, and so that the government, has clear information and data, so that they can invest to promote the quality of that program, especially the program which is needed, is important for economic development. Okay, is it time for me?
Yes.
Moderator?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, His Excellency, for your valuable comments to our debaters. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Kim Rotanan, President of Western University, to have the adjudications.
Okay, so can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, very clear.
Okay. First of all, I personally would like to congratulate two teams for your effort. I believe you have done a lot of research for this topic and a lot of reference. And to sum up, good points for team. So you raise questions related to the topic, and discussion, exchange idea, knowledge between two teams, and you respect each other, no interruption is a good point while talking. And then however, so my attention is the even you show a lot of case studies related to the ASEAN nations and US, whatever, but seems like you got less concrete evidence to support, especially in the specific countries. You talk in general, and one more attention is the in terms of time management for both teams. Seems like you talk in general, not specific, example. And I'm one of the educator involved education for over 20 years. This is very challenging topics, actually, for ASEAN nations as a general. And so let me brief a little bit about the, Indonesian side. You got the example about the case study in Cambodia, Myanmar, or updated information. And by comparing with the European countries and technology, whatever, and similarly with the Myanmar team, show the engineering programs, example, standard accreditation in ASEAN countries is very positive. In terms of the response to the questions, so it's not so clear by giving example straight to the questions. However, both teams are, we call the dynamic teams in terms of the debate or discussion. So I conclude that the dynamic team. So we appreciate it. But however, so we got one group, another is not the same points. I'm sorry to say this one because to sum up, we got good and points, good and bad. But however, so we appreciated what you have done and the clear explanation in some case, but the other seems like it's not the response to the right answer from what I observed. So this is my feedback, but in general, it's good. In general, it's good for both teams. So from Indonesia and Myanmar team. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kiengratana, for your educations. Now let me invite Her Excellency Ted Kalab, Rector of Phnom Penh International University, to give the comments.
Thank you so much, moderator, and my respect judge, and my beloved both him from Indonesia and Myanmar. The first, I want to appreciate both him. You are very dynamic and also provides very confident statement, and also I can say that you are doing a lot of research on the debates, because as my experience that I'm working in higher education, and then I can say that you have learned a lot about quality assurance in higher education, and like Dr. Watchang and also Dr. Kiengratana said, higher education also in every country really needs, and also apply in every higher education institutions. Of course, you have a very good arguments for quality assurance, but of course, in every country they have customized from the quality assurance for their own, and also some institutions trying to aim to international standards and also apply for the member of some international accredited body. So like in Cambodia, we have our own quality assurance body, and also they a lot of educational institutions also apply for that, and also apply for the international like Asian quality standard as well. Of course, you give us very good example and also give us some reference, but of course it's not enough, and also sometimes it's not so clear. But of course you have given us a lot already, and also all of you have very dynamic speech, but some of you very fast. very fast that sometimes I cannot catch up with your tone, but just very few of you. So, and also you cooperate and give information to defend your positions as well, and also work as team, and also eye contact, and also give very good information from both sides. And I want to comment one of the member of that. When someone they give some statement, or they have give the questions, do not interrupt them. Just give them a chance to questions, or give the statement until they finish, and then you can react after that. So inclusions, all everything, so both outside very good, and I appreciate your commitment, and keep moving forward. You will be very good speakers, and also one of members of higher education in ASEAN, and have their education in ASEAN to improve our quality as well. Thank you so much, and this is all my comment. Thank you.